Today on Independent Wrestling Profiles, we're talking with the Takedown King, Jaxon Roy. How long have you been a wrestling fan?
It's a great question to start. So I've been a wrestling fan for, I guess it would be 20 years by now. I started watching wrestling in 2001. The first time I ever tuned into wrestling was around the WCW Invasion era. So that was the first time I actually tuned into wrestling, because prior to actually watching wrestling, I was very into anime. I was into like the cartoon fighting shows like Dragon Ball Z and like Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers. I was really into that. So when I watched pro wrestling for the first time, it really intrigued me because I was like, these are like real guys fighting. You know, like these are like real guys doing like these cool moves. So around that time, I was introduced to guys like Booker T, Rob Van Dam, Edge, Eddie Guerrero. Those are the guys who really like intrigued me in the beginning. So yeah, it's been about 20 years now. I officially really started watching in like 2000, like 4 or 5, like the mid 2000s as I was growing up. Like I was able to stay up and actually watch a full episode of Raw or SmackDown. But yeah, like that's how I kind of got into pro wrestling. I was also like a fan of like TNA, NWA TNA growing up, as well as Ring of Honor and Shakara. So those are kind of the other promotions that I got into outside of WWE.
I can see the connection because you watch like the combat shows that are intended for kids, and you add in the pageantry, the costumes, all of the presentation that's involved in wrestling, and you can see how that's almost like a real life depiction of it. That introduction to wrestling, was there somebody that like introduced you to it? Was it like a social thing with friends or any family members, or did you just turn it on one night and you're like, hey, what's this?
No, I think it was just more so like it's like kind of like everyone else. Like you're flipping through the channels and you just stumble across wrestling. My mom was a big wrestling fan. She actually went to WrestleMania 6 here in Toronto. So she was a big wrestling fan. So when we would, when I would flip through the channels and wrestling would come on, she would actually be like happy that I'm watching it. She was like, no, she wasn't like, oh, you're not watching this wrestling thing, it's too violent. She was happy to see me getting into wrestling because she was a big wrestling fan. But no, like I kind of just stumbled across it and I just like fell in love with it. And then as you're like growing up and you're going to school, you meet other people who are wrestling fans. You meet friends who are also wrestling fans. And I had a good couple of friends. Like we were obsessed with wrestling. Like we would like go to school and we'd have the binders and like we would print off wrestlers and like we'll make that like the front of our binders. Like we'll walk around like we're so cool. We would wear the wrestling shirts to school and like we were just obsessed. Birthday parties will be wrestling. They would say, don't try this at home, but we'd not listen to that. We would still do it, like we were obsessed. And it was just such a good time growing up, meeting people who have the same interests as you and just just loving pro wrestling altogether.
It's almost like you were a part of a club, right? Like all wrestling fans are a part of a community. Did you have an opportunity around that time or even shortly after to actually attend a live event, whether it was, a big, like a WWE or even just an indie, like just something to get a feel of the live crowd?
Yeah, like growing up, I went to a couple of wrestling events. SummerSlam in '04, in Toronto, the one that Randy Orton won the world title. I attended that one. So that was a really nice memory. I remember going to Survivor Series in 2016. I believe that's the one where Goldberg returned and faced Brock Lesnar.
Okay.
I went to that one, and then I've been to a couple of like Monday Night Raws. I recently just went to not recently, past couple of years, I went to AEW with Mikey. We went to AEW to watch the show, and actually, no, even more recently, we went to NXT in Toronto to support Carmen Petrovic, which is also a friend of ours. So so yeah, like I've been to a couple of them. Always like enjoying them. It's always a good time, and yeah, it's always fun.
So obviously this is a loaded question and it's difficult to answer because there are probably so many, but who are some of like your early favorites that when you were getting into it or as you were getting more into it and involving your taste in wrestling that were like must watch for you?
Oh yeah, like I said earlier, like Booker T. Booker T, I say this all the time, is my favorite wrestler of all time. He was like the first guy I saw when I first tuned into wrestling. It was actually, I think it was his debut, is when he attacked Stone Cold Steve Austin and he put him through the announcer's table. Like when I saw that, like I was hooked just like that. And I was like, this is my guy. He has a nice look to him. He's entertaining. He's doing the spinner Rooney. He's doing all those cool like kicks, all those cool innovative moves. So definitely him, as well as Rob Van Dam. He was just so different, so innovative, and it just really caught my eye. And also like fellow Canadians like Chris Jericho, Edge. Like when I would when they would come out and they would say like, "Oh, from Toronto," I was like, "Oh, that's where I'm from." You know, like that's just really like what got me hooked on them. Um, Eddie Guerrero, so charismatic, so funny. Like he just was like, oh, he was like everything to me. Like he was like one of my favorites growing up. But outside of WWE, like I said, I would also watch TNA. So the guys that really hooked me was like AJ Styles, of course, like what just like Robin them, very innovative, very cool. Samoa Joe, a big dude, but he can move. That's really what caught my eye. Low key, Senshi in TNA, just the intensity he had. Like he was very, very intense, and that's really what hooked me as well. So those are some of the guys that really like got me into becoming a big fan of pro wrestling. They just really caught my eye.
So obviously there hits a point where you decide to start training, but before we get to that, did you kind of have a history of being like an athletic person? Did you participate in sports or anything like that growing up that kind of kept you more involved in like the physicality that would later come with wrestling?
Yeah, like so growing up, I actually did a little bit of karate. Like my mom would put me and my sister into karate just so that we wouldn't, be going out doing stuff we're not supposed to do. So she signed us up for karate. I did that for a little bit, but over time I kind of grew out of that. I always loved just working out, just being in shape, and just going to the gym. But as I got a little older, I really fell in love with amateur wrestling.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I started doing amateur wrestling in high school, and I did it all through my whole high school experience. And just seeing guys like Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin, all those guys come from the amateur wrestling ranks to WWE really motivated me to be like, okay, I want to do this. I want to join amateur wrestling. So yeah, I started doing that in high school. For me in high school, it was like athletics first, academic second. Like I really was just so into amateur wrestling, and I ended up winning a couple of tournaments. I placed go first, second, third. I ended up wrestling in provincials, which is basically the best in Ontario, at OFSA. So I did that 1 year. And then even outside of high school, when I finished, I started training in a little bit, just at different camps here and there, just to stay active, just to keep my moves sharp. But yeah, like I did that. I did a little bit of MMA, boxing, but like mainly amateur wrestling is what kept me like involved with wrestling and kept me like loving like this amateur side of wrestling.
So let's talk about the trigger. What happens? Where are you in life where you decide, okay, now it's time to step into the world of professional wrestling and start training in a school or maybe even like in a backyard if if that's what you did or something?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I believe we did a little bit of backyard wrestling while I was in. We would in high school. We actually had a big field, like a big open field, and me and my friends would actually do like pro wrestling shows, like just for people like at recess or whatever. Like we just do little like shows. So we did a little bit of that. But I always wanted to be a pro wrestler. I always wanted to get into pro wrestling. The question was when. So I it's very interesting actually. It was the pandemic. And I'm like, okay, it's 2 weeks before the pandemics where I first started pro wrestling. But like I was at home, just on Instagram, flipping through, Instagram, and then what pops up is a free trial 1 week Battle Arts Academy. Battle Arts Academy is a school based out of Mississauga, Ontario. It's ran by or owned by Santino Morella, former WWE superstar, currently TNA. But yeah, like I was skipping through Instagram and I saw that and I was like, this is a sign. This is a sign for me to finally do this. And like I can't turn back now. So I saw that. I'm like, okay, let me call up the school. Let me see how's this program gonna go. So I called up the school and I said, hey, I'd like to join your pro wrestling program. How would I go about doing that? They brought me in. They kind of ran through the whole thing with me, the whole program. And after I finished the whole 1 week, they said like one of my coaches, Nick Andrews, also known as Asylum, he said like, hey, you're pretty athletic. What do you think about joining the gym like for real, like actually getting a membership? And him saying like, oh, like I think you have a little bit of potential really motivated me to join the gym and actually start my journey. So after that happened, 2 weeks later we shut down. It was the time where like we were like opening and then closing, opening, closing, like it was around that time. So 2 weeks later I joined, we shut down, and I was like, oh no, what am I gonna do now? Like this sucks.
Yeah.
So we closed for like 6 months. We came back in July. I kept my training going, and then yeah, the rest is history.
So that 2 weeks was just enough to kind of give you a taste and make you want more for when the world opened up again.
Exactly.
Do you recall any sort of like feelings or emotions that you were experiencing when you actually first started doing that? Was there any sort of, I don't know if it was confidence or maybe fear or something that you just weren't ready for? Or no, just like as soon as you did it, it felt natural.
When I first, so when I first started in the ring, um, I was like, this feels good. Like this feels is like where I belong. Um, I first started like running the ropes, and I was like, this feels good. Like it's not supposed to feel good.
No.
It's supposed to really hurt, especially running the ropes. But I'm like, this just something just was just telling me like this feels good. This is where I'm meant to be. The main thing I was actually nervous about was actually just the people. Growing up, I was really a shy person, really quiet. So just like how you would go to a new school, you kind of don't know anybody. So you were kind of just like, oh, I don't know anyone. I don't know who to talk to like, that was kind of me when I first walked into Battle Arts. I was really quiet. But luckily I met a couple of friends, Mikey being one of them, that really made me feel comfortable. And yeah, like we have a bunch of good guys and girls there we're a brotherhood, we're a sisterhood. So I'm just so grateful that I came up with a few of these guys and we're still training to this day.
So that shyness, does that carry over to even today? Do you ever still feel a little kind of standoffish, maybe if you're in a new locker room or if you're at the merch table and you're being approached by people, or have you become a little bit more comfortable with it? Or maybe even just the adrenaline of the event makes it so that you don't really feel it as much?
I think sometimes I still kind of get that little like awkwardness, especially when I'm like talking to someone who's maybe been in the business for a while. I kind of just, you know, kind of don't know how to like approach things sometimes. So luckily, Mikey's really social. So he kind of has helped me along the way of being like more like maneuvering through like the business of like how to talk to this person, what to say to this person. Um, but I do think I've gained like confidence when it comes to being in the ring and like being vocal, just showing my personality because I'm the person when it's where it's like when I have my gear on, when I have like my outfit on, I turn into a different person. Like I'm way more confident, I'm way more vocal. But when it's like, when you're kind of just like get back to the curtain, you're kind of just I can sometimes be more on the quieter side, but I'm definitely getting better at being more social just by, you know, getting more comfortable with people around me.
You don't have to go into detail or embarrass yourself or anything, but do you recall maybe like the moment where you were the most starstruck or somebody that you met that you were just like, I can't believe that I am talking to this person and I hope I didn't say anything foolish, but you don't have to go into what you said or anything like that.
I don't think like I've gotten to that point like on the indie scene, but
Okay.
like I've done like backstage at like WWE, like I've done extra work. And like I remember one time I was waiting to get my physical done. Like they do physicals before they do the whole other extra work for the wrestlers. And I remember I was standing and Edge was literally sitting right in front of me. And I was
Wow.
like, whoa. And he was actually talking to Beth. They were just sitting there having a coffee. And I was just like kind of frozen for a second because I'm like, wow, this is like one of my favorite wrestlers of all time just sitting right in front of me. So like that's kind of like what I remember being like starstruck. But as far as like, you know, people in the indie scene. I don't think I've gotten that. I think I've just kind of been, like I said, like more like quiet or, I haven't really gotten starstruck. So
You and I are the opposite. I meet really famous celebrities and I'm totally fine. I meet somebody at
yeah,
the Indies and I just start bumbling over my words because I don't know what to say. Nobody's actually brought up extra work yet. So I'm just curious, like, how does that come up? Like, how do you get involved in doing extra work for the WWE? Is that through like the school connections?
yeah. So I've done it about I think two times now. The first time I did it was actually through the school. Um, they were coming into town. They were coming into, I believe it was, they were doing a whole like Canada tour, and they were like looking for talent in the local area. So they have that connection with Anthony Santino. So when they are in town, they contact Battle Arts and they'll say, "Hey, is there any of the students that you know that would be a good fit for extra work?" At the time, they contacted Nick Andrews, who was our main coach at the time. He also goes by Asylum, Stone Rockwell as well. So they contacted him, and he was really one of the guys who drove like, hey, I'd like Jackson and a couple of other guys to do extra work. I think these are really guys that they'll be professional. I can trust them. So when I first did it, it was actually in Montreal. I believe it was the show with Sammy and Roman. I think they were facing one on one for the title. That was a great experience. I walked in, I seen the wrestlers backstage. They seem like they're just always having a good time. They're always having fun, cracking jokes. But like, yeah, it was a great experience. I got to talk to Tyson Kidd as well. Like, actually did a seminar at Battle Arts 2 months prior. So when he saw me backstage, he was kind of like, "Hey, it's good to see you." So I was good, like reconnecting with him. Um, I also remember just seeing like Brock Lesnar for the first time, and I'll tell you, like, he's a really big dude. He's a bad dude. What you see on TV, like I'm telling you, man, like he's the real deal. So that was like, yeah, that was a good experience. And then the second time I did it was actually just recently. Mikey was actually with me, so we got to do it together. It was, I believe, it was a Raw. It was the tour they did for the Money in the Bank. It was the Money in the Bank weekend. So we did Raw in Ottawa, and then we got to be backstage again, and you got to see some of the guys that we grew up watching again, like Rey Mysterio, which is Mikey's favorite wrestler. So he was pretty stoked to see him. We shook hands with a couple of the wrestlers. CM Punk was really nice to us. Adam Pearce was really nice to us. So just being backstage at WWE is a really good experience. And the main thing that is good about being backstage at WWE is like it gives you that fire, it gives you that motivation. It's like this is where I want to be eventually. This is what I got to do to like I need to be at this level. Like I got to keep working. I got to keep training. I got to get my name out there because this is potentially a place that I would love to work.
Sounds like you've had quite the support system. You got friends like Mikey, your mom's into wrestling, you got your coach vouching for you for this. So that's actually awesome. But let's step back to the training. Okay. You're at Battle Arts, we're post-pandemic. Can you guide me through what led up to your first match?
Oh yes. So yeah, so we like I said, we came back in the summer of 2021. I believe it's 2021. Yes, 2021. And we were like, okay, we got to keep training because we got to put it all. We got to come 4 days a week, like train 4 days a week because we don't know if this world is going to shut down again. So all of us, all the guys were like collectively like, let's go, let's train, let's show the coaches, let's show battlers, let's show everybody that we're serious about this. We really want to like have our first matches, have our first show. So leading to our first show, like our first show was in December of 2021, but leading into that, we were all like working on our characters, working on mic, like our personas, our mic skills, our personas, everything. We actually had a mock show, which is basically like a student mock show where everyone else in the gym, like the boxers, the MMA fighters, anyone can come watch. It's mostly just for the people in the school. And the main idea of that was just to kind of like test and show the coaches like what we got leading into the actual real show. So there I got to like show a little bit of what I am today, the Takedown King. I came out with a singlet. I kind of came out with the medal that I had. And I got to wrestle one of the OG Battle Arts students, John Gonzalez, who is amazing. He taught me a lot and he really like guided me through my first like little practice match. After that, I kind of gained a little bit more confidence. And then leading into December, this was our first ever like student show. Our first student show involved it was me and actually Mikey. Mikey was my manager actually. When we first came out, Mikey was not even my tag partner. When we started, it was Mikey was my manager. And funny enough, my first ever opponent, like on the actual real show, was actually B. Smith, now a member of Dynasty. So it's kind of funny how like we look back and he's now a part of our group, but he was my first match, and we kind of had a little bit of a rivalry leading into that show. So yeah, we've come full circle.
So you've been the Takedown King since day one. Like you knew who you wanted to be, and it's just been an evolution from there.
So actually not really. So Takedown King really was. It's a funny story. So actually, leading into the show, we actually had promo class. So this promo class was basically like you have 1 minute, choose anyone in the class and cut a promo on them. So I chose another student in the class. He also has a little bit of an MMA background. And leading into the show, I would notice that at practices, the coaches would choose him to teach some of the amateur wrestling moves. And like I said, he does have a background, but like I knew he didn't like have the same level of background in amateur wrestling that I had. So that kind of rubbed me a little bit the wrong way about how, they're choosing him, they're not really choosing me. So I decided to cut the promo on him. I basically said, like, I've noticed that for the past couple of weeks, the coaches have been choosing you to teach the takedowns, you to teach all the amateur wrestling moves. But what you need to realize is that I'm the real king of this. I'm the real Takedown King. And it just came out. It just came out. And after the promo was done, my coach was like, huh, Takedown King. I like that.
Yeah.
You should keep that. And I was like, really? I just said it. Like I didn't really plan to say it. It just came out. And he's like, no, keep it. I like it. It's something different, you know? It's more like a self-proclaimed takedown king type of thing. And I really like it because it, like I said, it gives me confidence. It's giving me confidence in the ring. It's giving me confidence to show my personality, and it just also kind of connects me to my previous amateur wrestling career that I had. So I just tied that both together, and that's kind of how it was born, just from a promo, you know.
That's amazing. Things come from sources you'd least expect.
Exactly.
I've already talked to D. Smith and Mikey, but I'd like to hear in your words, how did Destiny become a thing? Or sorry, how did Dynasty become a thing?
It's okay. Everyone, you know, Dynasty Destiny
Hey,
sounds
you
the
guys
same.
are Destiny Tag Team Champions, right? So
Exactly.
it makes sense that I would mix those up. I was in
Exactly.
the audience for that, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, you know, like yeah, like it's always good. Like Destiny, honestly, yeah, so much fun being on Destiny. But yeah, Dynasty. Dynasty started from just an idea that Mikey Truth had. Mikey loves the, you know, create a pro wrestler video game type of world. He's done that for many years. And he always had the idea of creating a group. He didn't know exactly what the group's name was going to be. But he's just like, I always had this idea of a group. And when I first started training with him, we just gelled. We had so much chemistry. You know, we have the same kind of background, like same cultural background. So that's kind of really I connected with him. Um, so I remember the day he approached me and he said like, "Hey, we have our show coming up. I really want to do this idea that I had. I want me and you and Sway at the time to let's do this group." And I was like, "Oh, cool!" Like, keep in mind, like this is like my first couple weeks, months into wrestling, so if you're gonna come to me saying I'm gonna be in a group, I'm jumping on that, you know, because I always loved like the factions, the stables, Evolution, DX. I always loved that. So I was very excited when he decided to include me in the group. Um, so I was like, okay, so what is this gonna be called? And he's like, I'm thinking of a couple of names, but I like the name Dynasty. And I was like, Dynasty, Dynasty. It sounds pretty cool. I like it. I remember a few days later, we started like going over like, okay, so what are we gonna look like? What is the logo gonna look like? What is the music? You know, like I love that side of wrestling, the music, the look, like how you look, the swag, everything. So me and him, I remember we were like up to like almost 2 in the morning going over like different songs. Like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? We finally landed with the Jay-Z. It's a Jay-Z song. It's also from his album called The Dynasty. So we kind of went with that. We took the instrumental from that, remixed it a little bit, and we were like, this is gonna be our song. Um, so yeah, like we debuted, like I said, we debuted the first night. He was my manager against D. Smith, who at the time was called Sexy Stan.
Yeah.
So we debuted that. And then the funny thing is like the next match after that was actually Mikey and Sway. And so
Oh,
Mikey, so the first match on the show was me versus D. Smith, and Mikey was in his manager clothes. He literally had to leave, change into his gear, and then wrestle a tag team match with Sway. So that was it. Yeah, that was like the first night, and you know, Sway as well. Sway, we always respected Sway. He's just a veteran at Battle Arts. He's been wrestling. He's been training at Battle Arts since 2015, since the doors opened. So we always knew that we're like, okay, if we're gonna add one of these veterans to kind of guide us and kind of give us advice when we first start, it's gonna be Sway. Sway also is a master at making gear. I don't know if you've interviewed him yet, but I'm pretty
not
sure
yet.
if you haven't, he's gonna tell you all about that. But yeah, like he's great at that that area in pro wrestling. But yeah, that's kind of how we all came together. And D Smith actually came to us a few months later. Um, that story kind of just goes with like, okay, we have been feuding with D Smith, but he's been looking to kind of like change or go away from the sexy Stan character, and he wanted to revamp himself. So we kind of had him kind of do a double cross type of thing where he was supposed to be wrestling us in a tag match, and he kind of double crosses his tag team partner and joined us. And ever since then, he's been a part of Dynasty, and we're so happy to have him.
That's amazing. So I just want to ask you, in the time that you've been wrestling now, is there one moment, one match, one opportunity that you had that has kind of served as like the highlight? Just some, whether it was winning a match, winning a belt, being in a match, just what's been the highlight so far in your career?
Oh, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to my mind was just a few months ago. We debuted at GCW in Toronto. That was a moment that I will never forget, just because it's very like unexpected. Like we knew that okay, maybe one day we might get this opportunity because we were helping out at IWS for the previous year in the same venue, and that kind of got us talking to the IWS promoter, and he has a connection with GCW. So we always would hear like the rumors of, hey, like I might get you guys something like next year, when GCW comes back to Toronto. And we kind of waved it off. We were like, yeah, okay, we'll see. But yeah, he kept his promise. And just a few months ago, we were kind of like surprised. Like we knew we'd possibly be on the show, but we didn't really know what we were doing until like 6 o'clock that morning. 6 o'clock that morning, we saw the match card. It said Dynasty versus Violence is Forever for the GCW tag team titles. Like we were like, whoa, like this is incredible. But yeah, that day, like that morning leading into that was just such a an amazing experience because like I was like feeling like, wow, like this is gonna happen. GCW is one of the biggest indie promotions in the world, and we're like 3 years into Dynasty, and we're getting this huge opportunity. Um, a lot of nerves that morning, of course, because like I was like, wow, a lot of guys like dream about having this opportunity. A lot of guys have been doing this for a long time and have not got that opportunity. So I was very, very nervous, but grateful that I was getting that opportunity to compete on this main stage and in our hometown as well. We came out, the energy was hot. We saw the diamonds up. We saw all that from the crowd. And like, we all did like this kind of genuine like group hug before we came out there. It was like, yeah, like I love you guys. I'm proud of you guys. And we did it, like let's go out there and let's kill it. So that's one of the moments that really stand out to me. Also, just us winning the tag team titles at Destiny was a good moment. We worked so hard, especially Sway. Sway has done so much for Destiny, and that moment was all of ours. But I'm really happy he got that moment because he's done so much good work for that promotion. And also for the crossbody, me winning the tag team titles with Mikey at crossbody was a good moment because I just always wanted to win the titles with Mikey because he was the first guy I really connected with when I first started at Battle Art. So to go from then to winning the tag team titles was a great moment.
That's amazing. Before we sign out here, why don't we step out of the ring for a little bit? Are you still a fan of anime?
A little bit, like I'm a fan of like old anime. Like I'm not. I watched Dragon Ball Z. I watched a little bit of Naruto, a little bit of Inuyasha. If you ask me about the new stuff, not so much familiar. I think I'm just always been a big Dragon Ball Z fan.
Okay, so let me ask you about Dragon Ball Z then.
Sure.
Who's your favorite character and why should it be Vegeta?
I love that. This is funny, and my friends give me a little bit of flack for this, and I don't care. My favorite character is Krillin.
All respect, man.
Yes.
You think about it, he's the only human who's participating in all of that. No alien, no nothing. And his Destructo Disc is the only thing that can cut Cell as just a regular human being.
Exactly.
But it's still
exactly.
Vegeta.
I love Vegeta. You know, I love Vegeta. He's like honestly like one of the coolest like characters of all time to me. Like he's just, you know, he's the original like heel. And like, you know, in cartoons or anime or whatever, like he has aura, you know, like the kids say these days. You know, I love Krillin. I love Vegeta. Majin Buu was like so cool to me for some reason. You know, I loved the Majin Buu era. I love the Cell saga, the Buu saga. Like those are my favorite sagas. I never liked Frieza. I thought Frieza was funny, you know, funny looking. But I always liked Majin Buu and Cell when it comes to my villains. And then when it comes to my heroes, it was Krillin. I would say Go Tanks.
Okay.
I would say, you know, when they fused together, they had like that cool, like fuse, that voice that they fused together. That was really cool. And who else would I say? Oh, maybe throwing Gohan in there. Gohan was cool. Goku, yeah, a little bit overrated for me, but I like Gohan.
Wicked. So I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with me. Before we sign out, can you just quickly let people know where they can find you, like online, if they want to follow you or just keep track of where your matches are coming up and things like that?
Sure. So yeah, you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. I call it Twitter. I don't call it X. You can follow me at Jaxon_Roy. Yeah, like I said, Instagram and Twitter. I also have TikTok. I only post wrestling clips there. Sometimes I repost like some of the matches that I've liked over the years. I'll repost that on my TikTok. So that's at Jaxon Roy 95. And I also have a YouTube channel at Jaxon Roy. I post some of my matches up there, so you can see full matches or some promos on my YouTube channel. And yeah, you know, I also have a Pro Wrestling Tees account, so you can buy a couple of my shirts, Takedown season shirts I have up there, Dynasty T-shirt. So you can also follow that. And yeah, like just stay tuned to all of our social medias, Mikey, Sways, Derek's. Stay tuned, and you know, we have a couple of big matches coming up. Tomorrow we're at Crossbody Pro Wrestling. I don't know when this is coming out, but
late October.
We're going to be at Crossbody Pro Wrestling. We're going to be at Destiny. Destiny has their tapings coming up soon at the Don Kolov Arena, so we'll be on there. And yeah, just stay tuned. And you know, Dynasty is going to be coming soon. You know, we're coming to a city near you.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Always, man. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Independent Wrestling Profiles. Please help out the show if you can with a like, subscription, or review. We'll see you next time.